after Christian McCaffrey, the number 2 player in fantasy should be
Saquon Barkley.
the next Dalvin Cook or round 2 running back who's going to be top 5 in 2021 is.
There's probably a couple that qualify. Let's say Kenyon Drake, though. He's somebody I think should be going in the first round.
What is your favorite fantasy team name that you've either had or seen before?
I'm a big fan of putting my own name in my team names, Boone, and Boone is one that kind of works pretty easy. So there was a league where I did the Boone Identity, kind of like the Bourne Identity. And then when I won that year, the next year I switched it to the Boone Supremacy, and I just kept it as that name because I kept doing really well every year.
Did you take it down with the Boone Supremacy as well?
Yeah, I think I won the second year as well,
Awesome.
And then I couldn't get rid of the name after that.
I love it. That's fantastic. What about the next Chris Godwin, round 4 or 5 receiver who explodes into the elite?
I mean, this one might be obvious because everybody seems to be on him, but Calvin Ridley, I would probably say, is the guy there. It's pretty hard not to go with him. I mean, I'm not 100% sure of A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown might be going in that range. Maybe he's snuck into the third at this point, but both those guys, I think, got good shots to do that.
What about 2020's Mark Andrews or breakout tight end?
Oh, it's Hayden Hurst. And for some reason, people are still sleeping on him. I know it's supposed to be rapid fire here, but we did a mock at the Score this week, and he was still available in like the 12th round. I think 15 or 16 tight ends had already gone off the board, and I already had a tight end, and I had to take him. I couldn't let him go undrafted.
Love it. Who is your most hated NFL player, and it's for fantasy-specific reasons?
Oh, for fantasy specific? I mean, it's probably for both. I gotta say Tom Brady. I mean, I'm wearing the Bills hat, right? It's been both. I don't really like drafting Patriots players normally, but I've never had Tom Brady on my team in fantasy, and I never will, hopefully.
I hate to say it too, and I saved it to the end here, but I'm actually a pretty diehard Pats fan myself. I figured you might hang up on me if I release that info too early.
Where's the fucking hang up?
All right, the next, if there's somehow another Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, it would be.
There might be, and it might be Kyler Murray this year.
I think it's 5 for 5 now. All the experts I've had on have said Kyler Murray. So.
He fits the mold. The only difference is he costs a lot more this year than Lamar did last season.
Exactly. Which early rounder, first or second, is going to bust the hardest?
I think Leonard Fournette still, last I looked at the ADP, I think he's still sneaking in late in the second, but he's too obvious. Let's say Derrick Henry. I think people forget every year they have it fresh in their mind that at the end of the season he goes off and he has a month or two where he's just unbelievable. But before that, the last couple of years, he was not great for fantasy. So you got to watch out. He doesn't get a lot of receiving work. And if the team isn't winning as much, last year was kind of the perfect storm for him. I worry about him where he's going, which is, middle of the first round, late in the first round.
Who gained the most fantasy value in the 2020 offseason?
I mean, for me, DJ Moore probably, because, the more I look at him, the more I just see a guy that's going to be an elite fantasy player, who's going to be an elite receiver and maybe even put up top 5 numbers this year. I think this year, at this time next year, we're going to be talking about him as a top 5 fantasy receiver. And the coaching staff, the offensive coaching staff, a little upgrade on quarterback with Kyle Allen, like we talked about with Bridgewater. It's looking pretty good for DJ Moore.
Conversely, who do you think lost the most value this offseason?
Oh, this one's got to be obvious. It's Jameis, right? Come on, Jameis Winston. Who throws for 5,000 yards and then doesn't even have a starting job the next year? How does that happen?
Very random question here, but do you ever play Settlers of Catan?
I do not. I have not, and I don't even know that I could tell you one fact about that.
It's one of my favorites. I always just sneak that one in there. All right.
My apologies.
No worries. I think I'm 0 for 5 on that one. I probably have to stop asking. The next sophomore wide receiver after or even before A.J. Brown that you should take is?
The next sophomore, DK Metcalf is next up in my rankings, but Terry McLaurin's not far behind.
Target hogs or workhorse backs?
Workhorse backs. Yeah, you got to at this point. There's not many of them.
Alvin Kamara, James Conner, Austin Eckler. All were top 5 running backs, all after round 7. In 2020, that'll be. Alexander Madison, but it's not going to be because of a holdout. It's probably going to be because of an injury to Dalvin Cook, maybe. But I'll also throw, a guy that I seem to be getting everywhere,
Chase Edmunds. Whoever is starting in that Cardinals offense at running back is going to put up big numbers. Edmunds got one game, and he did it last year in that one game at like 3 touchdowns. If he gets a shot, if Kenyon Drake gets hurt at some point, Chase Edmunds is going to be a really, really good fantasy asset.
What do you consider the ideal league settings?
I like 14 teams a lot because then you don't have an advantage where, you play a really difficult team twice. In a 14-team league, everybody plays every team once, which is really nice. I like half-point PPR, Superflex. At this point, everybody has to switch to Superflex. If you're playing in a 1-quarterback league, you're just wasting your time. Come on. You got to dig a little deeper. We talked about Teddy Bridgewater. He's QB 26. That guy's going to be a starter this year. Come on. So I would say those, and then as many flex spots as you want to load up on, because the more flex spots you put in, the higher the degree of difficulty. It just makes it a more challenging and more fun league.
After Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams, owners should draft blank at wide receiver.
It's still Julio. The guy's so consistent, right? Like you look at his numbers over the last few years, and I know I'm giving an answer for each one. It's supposed to be rapid fire, but it's Julio. Julio at number 3.
Blank was the most important coaching move for blank's value in fantasy.
We talked about it earlier. Stefanski going to the Browns and for Chubb and for Hunt.
Do running backs matter?
Yes, but they're probably the position that you can replace most of the production the easiest, and that's why everybody gets on them.
What is the funniest last place punishment or side bet that you've either witnessed or had to be a part of?
This one wasn't fantasy. It was a straight up kind of bet on a game, but I bet a coworker a couple years ago. It was the Bills versus the Saints, and I got goaded into it. It wasn't my finest moment. And if the Bills won the game, he was going to dye his big beard Bills blue, like the bright Bills blue. And if the Saints won, I had to dye my hair blonde and bleach it out. And sadly, I lost that one, and I kept up my end of the bargain. He allowed me to wait till after the season so that I didn't look too foolish. And I remember when I went and got it done, the guy that put the color in my hair was like, "Yeah, we're going to make it look great." And I was like, no, we're not. It's not going to look good, but I got to pay off the bet, and I did. So a couple months there where I was not looking my best.
I was going to ask how long was the time stipulation on that one? A couple months?
Well, the thing I didn't realize was even after you do it, it kind of seeps into your head. So your next round of hair that comes out, it's still a little bit blonde. I had to wait way longer for it to come back. Yeah.
Brutal. And the last question here. So Boldest 2020 fantasy prediction, and then just a reminder of where our listeners can kind of connect and find your work.
One, I've been giving out a couple bold predictions recently. One that's really sticking with me is, and I don't have it ranked this way, but I think it definitely could happen, Gardner Minshew finishing as a top 10 fantasy quarterback. And I did not, last year, I was not that high on him through it all. I didn't really get into Minshew mania whatsoever. I think there was one week where I started him, and it was like that really awful London game where he put up like negative points or something like that. But with the rushing stats that he can put up, with the offensive changes they made in the coaching staff there, bringing in Jay Gruden can help them immensely. Mm-hmm. And I like some of the pieces they surrounded him with. Laviska Shenault, some veteran guys, Tyler Eifert and Chris Thompson. And I like what we're seeing from Minshew. He's taking the lead. He's getting the players together. I think he's got a really good shot. It's mostly because the rushing production that I don't think everybody realizes. He was on pace. If you take just the games where he started 100% of the snaps, not the ones where, Nick Foles came in or he came in for Nick Foles and all that stuff, he was on pace for like 440 rushing yards, and that would have put him like 4th, I think, overall. And you definitely don't think of him as, a Josh Allen, Kyler Murray kind of producer on the ground. Very, very sneaky. And we know to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback, you almost have to put up those rushing numbers now. Right. So Minshew could do it on a team that's going to have to throw the ball a lot. Oh, and then you said my content, everything's available at The Score. It's free. The Score app is free, so go download it. Our fantasy football draft kit is out right now. That is also free. It's important to say because there's so many draft kits out there that you got to pay for, and ours, as of last year, has the most accurate fantasy rankings in the industry and doesn't cost you a dime whatsoever. The Score Fantasy Football Podcast, we're going once a week right now. That'll ramp up to a few episodes a week closer to the season. And you can find me on Twitter, @Justin Boone. Happy to answer as many questions. Love interacting with everybody on there. And, man, I appreciate you having me on. This was really fun. I'm glad you asked.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.